Greetings. My name is Louise Dente, and I welcome you to yet another edition of Cultural Caravan. On this edition, we're on location in Wilmington, Delaware, at the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, and we're joined by the President and CEO, Dr. Umar Johnson, who welcome to Cultural Caravan.
Thank you, Queen Mother Louise. I'm glad to be back on Cultural Caravan for another great conversation. Thanks for having me.
I know when we were here last year, we also talked about the history. People may ask, why Delaware? What is significant about Delaware?
Well, firstly, I would say that I didn't choose Delaware. Delaware chose me, and it was the ancestors who chose us to come together, Dr. Umar in Delaware, because as you know, the search for an FDMG campus was a national search.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually thought I would be in Detroit, Chicago, Ohio, Florida, Carolina, Texas. The search took us everywhere and brought me right back home to my backyard. Of course, I'm a Philadelphia native. Delaware is only 30 minutes away. So when I say backyard, I say it respectfully, but Delaware is in Philadelphia's metaphorical backyard. So it was meant for me to be here. And believe it or not, there is some strong Pan Africanist history out of Delaware. For example, Samuel Cornish, who co-edited the very first black newspaper in American history with John Brown Russwurm, who was one of the earliest Pan Africanists and one of the first black men to get a college degree from a white university in this country. He co-edited with Delaware's Samuel Cornish the Freedom's Journal out of New York. 1827, I think, was the publication year. So you have Samuel Cornish coming out of Delaware, co-editing the first paper with one of our greatest Pan-Africanists. And then you have Queen Mother Harriet Tubman, who was from Maryland, a state away, but who spent a lot of time in Delaware for two reasons. Number one, the Underground Railroad came through Delaware. This was the last slave state an escaping African would need to survive before they could get to freedom in Pennsylvania. So Harriet Tubman spent a lot of time bringing enslaved Africans through the Underground Railroad by way of Delaware. And also to that point, Queen Mother Harriet Tubman's number one financial supporter was a white man by the name of Thomas Garrett, who's buried about 5 minutes away from where we're sitting. And he actually shares the same birthday with me, August the 21st. He is the one who provided Harriet Tubman with a great deal of her financial security. And you might even be aware, Queen Mother Louise, of a very famous painting of Queen Mother Harriet Tubman on the back of a wagon going to get her parents. She had just learned that her mother and father were supposed to be tried for helping their children run away or something to that effect. So she learned about it, went to Thomas Garrett. He gave her the wagon that she used to go and rescue her parents before it was too late. She got that right here in Wilmington. Mm-hmm. Still further, one of the great grandfathers of Pan Africanism is a gentleman by the name of Henry Highland Garnett. He's the first black pastor to address the U.S. Congress. He was also a recruiter for Africans in the Civil War, and he's considered Marcus Garvey before Marcus Garvey. Thomas Garrett helped his family escape from slavery in Maryland, Kent County, through Wilmington, Delaware. Bob Marley, who is probably considered the greatest musical prophet of Garveyism, used to spend his summers right here in Wilmington, Delaware with his mother working. And I actually met a brother whose father, I believe, worked with Bob Marley on one of the construction yards here. Mm-hmm. And last but not least, Marcus Garvey himself often came to Delaware, and the Black Star Line, the infamous Black Star Line Steamship Corporation that Marcus Garvey founded with the other members of the UNIA-ACL, was incorporated right here in the state of Delaware. And the Garveyites who took that paperwork to the state on behalf of the Honorable Marcus Garvey lived right here in the city of Delaware. And I actually spoke with a grandchild of those Garveyites who delivered the Black Star Line steamship paperwork for Marcus Garvey in 1919.
Wow.
So there is a lot of black history and Pan Africanist history right here in Wilmington. And the way that I see it quickly, Queen Mother, if Wilmington was the last stop for our ancestors on their way from slavery to freedom, it will once again function in the same vein for us. Only this time, it won't be the last stop in a physical slavery. It'll be the last stop on a mental slavery, because once they graduate from FDMG, they will be psychologically emancipated.
Wow. And so I think that it's so important that everyone realizes this and sees the connection. And you mentioned a very powerful name of an ancestor who we are celebrating in the month of August, the great Marcus Mosiah Garvey, whose birthday is on the 17th of August. I know that Marcus Garvey and his name is very much attached to this institution in terms of what he did. Can you tell us from the perspective of where are we in line with the mission of Garveyism? What should we be doing to further the goal of Garveyism?
I could summarize the mission of the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy as being the continuation and completion of the work of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. When you deal with Garveyism, you're dealing with self-determination, financially, politically, spiritually, economically. Whatever must be done for us must be done by us. We teach that here. When you deal with Garveyism, you deal with a love for Africa, a connection for Africa, and a respect for Africa that is so great that you admit that the government for African people, the central government for African people, which we do not yet have, should be headquartered on the soil of Africa. That is one of the principles of Garveyism that sets his Pan-Africanism apart from the Pan-Africanism of many of our ancestors. Also, when you deal with Garveyism, you're dealing with the image of your creator being a reflection of yourself. When I was in Newark the other day, there was a brother from Cameroon, and he explained to us that the word for God in his culture is the exact same word for melanin. Let me say that again. The word for God in his ancient culture is the exact same name for melanin. That means that melanin is God, in that it is the color and it is the chemical of the divine. Carbon, the element that makes things black, is indistinguishable from the creator who made it. So when we say God is black, it literally means that. When we say the black man is God, the black woman is God, we're saying that we are an extension, an expression, and a manifestation of the great divine blackness that the Creator gave birth to the universe from. So we will teach blackness as pride, as self-respect, and as a connection to the Creator. As the late great Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad said, blackness is color, consciousness, culture, and a connection to the divine cosmos.
Talk to us about how Garveyism and the extension of Garveyism is so critical for us at this point in our juncture. We're in the 21st century, and what you're doing is at least building institutions so that we can remember our culture. What are some of the things that need to happen across that by others, meaning you're doing your part with the institution, the education? What are some of the things that some of our other leaders and teachers should be doing to further the Garveyism in terms of what the mission was to liberate us mentally, spiritually, and physically?
Well, based on my thorough understanding of his personality, his political personality and work and principles, I think he would have issues with three things. Number one, our dependence on the American power structure, even more so now than it was 100 years ago when he walked amongst us in New York City. We are so dependent on the American government for the things that we need. And it makes no sense because we are a $2 trillion people. The dependence is voluntary. It's not prerequisite. It's voluntary. We don't need the government to build schools. We don't need the government to build hospitals. We don't need the government to feed us. We have the experts, the expertise, the education, and the money. What we lack is the Garvey mindset. We do not have the revolutionary Pan Africanist personality that will give birth to the creation of institutions and independent black communities. So he would be disgusted with our decision, because it is a decision, to depend on the government as opposed to doing it for ourselves. Number two, Garvey would have a strong issue with the fact that even today, even amongst a renaissance of Pan-Africanism, so many American Africans don't want to be associated with Africa, failing to recognize that if you don't see a future in Africa, you have no future, because there's no future for you without Africa. So he would have an issue with the fact that we're trying to drown ourselves in an American identity that doesn't truly exist, because everyone in America is an immigrant of some sort, because America was a land that was taken by blood. It is not the natural ancestral home of almost anyone who's here. It is a country of immigrants. So there's no such thing as being an American separate from the international homeland from which you come. So you're either an Italian American, a Chinese American, an Australian American, an Asian American. There's no such thing as just being an American. But black people will go out of their way to tell you that they left nothing in Africa and that they are American. So the hatred of African origin, Garvey would have a problem with. And the last thing that I would say, and there's so many, and I'm just giving you three. The third would be the self-hate. The Honorable Marcus Garvey said that we as a people are cursed with petty differences. And those petty differences that were used to destroy him and his movement 100 years ago are still with us now, because this is 2021. It was in 1921 when the Garvey movement unquestionably and unarguably became the largest black organization ever in modern history. But even with that power and that greatness, there were other blacks, some who even claimed to be Pan-Africanists, like W.E.B. Du Bois, who sought Marcus Garvey's downfall. It was W.E.B. Du Bois who America sent to Liberia to disrupt Garvey's plans to build a repatriation community for Africans in the diaspora who wanted to go home. A. Philip Randolph, who also worked to destroy Garvey. Cyril Briggs, Chandler Owens, W.A. Domingo, who I believe was a childhood playmate of the Honorable Marcus Garvey back in Jamaica. He was jealous of Garvey's rise and Garvey's success. So that those petty differences, although they are petty, they can cause some very colossal problems for us as a people. I always say, until we hate racism more than we hate each other, we'll never be free.
In terms of the work that I know that you've been doing and others to kind of take us to another level, it doesn't seem like people have changed in terms of we still have that crabs in a barrel thing. We have people who, unfortunately, when they see someone trying to do the right thing, are always thinking, oh, there's something behind it. And I think it's a mindset. And as being a professional who deals with mental slavery at this point, there are still a lot of people under that mental slavery. They feel, I always say, they feel white man's ice is colder. There's no such thing as, that there's nothing they can't really see outside of this reality. What do you say to those people who are doubtful, who are skeptical, who don't feel it's possible for us to do anything for ourselves?
The Honorable Marcus Garvey said that we have to sell the black man and woman back to themselves, because the European has sold us against ourselves. That's why we go out of our way to imitate every other people on the earth except ourselves. And as long as the oldest people imitate their offspring, as long as the people who built the greatest civilizations are now content to imitate other people, will never be respected. You cannot claim to be the psychological equal of another man and yet you want to imitate that man. That's a total contradiction. People who love themselves do not imitate, they create. We are supposed to be creating, not imitating. But here's what I say. We can win a lot of them back by constantly manifesting positive change and transformation. It's no different than a kid who joins a losing football team. The team ain't won a game in 20 seasons. But guess what? Let them win 3 in a row. They have his attention. Let them win 5 in a row. He wants to join them. Let them win the championship. He'll proclaim himself a proud member. We can get most of our people back. I tell people all the time, and this is something I learned from my Garvey elders back home in Philadelphia. They always told me up there on Cecil B. Moore Avenue that the condition we are in with regard to self-hate and Africans not wanting to achieve solidarity with one another for the purpose of achieving total emancipation is not so much because we're black. It's because of the condition we're in. Garvey says the same thing. In other words, Mother Louise, once we start building those institutions, building those Black Wall Streets, once we give black children and black people a reason to be proud again, they will automatically start claiming their Africanity again. They will automatically look to start joining us again. The problem is they don't have a reason in their minds. They don't have a reason to be proud to be an African. Once we give them a reason to be proud to be an African, everybody will come home. Not just the American Africans who say they haven't left nothing in Africa, the Spanish-speaking Africans, the Portuguese-speaking Africans, your brothers and sisters in Puerto Rico and Cuba, those brothers and sisters who suffer from a light-skin supremacy complex and would rather identify with the European enslaver as opposed to their African grandmothers, they'll come back home. Once we reclaim the throne, everyone will return home.
Mm-hmm. And just going into focusing on the celebration of the legacy of Garvey, what are some of the things that, in the spirit of Marcus Garvey, do you feel that our people can be doing, particularly, and I always talk about the parent, what we can be doing to celebrate, even within our home structure, to keep Garvey's legacy, the lessons, and the mission strong? What should we be doing as parents to keep that, the legacy of Garvey structure in our homes with our children? How do we build that?
Most African people don't know anything about Garvey, and so we need to teach it. Not because we are worshiping a personality, but because the program of that ancestor is exactly what is needed today. A non-religious, non-denomination, African-centered, political, economic, spiritual, educational, and social approach to African emancipation. The Garvey program is the only program that will liberate African people. And I can say that not just because I'm a Garveyite, but because non-Africans have used it to liberate their people. Ho Chi Minh copied many of Garvey's ideals to build the movement. In fact, Ho Chi Minh even admitted that he used to attend UNIA meetings in New York and that he was influenced by what he saw and incorporated many of Garvey's ideals into his own liberation struggle. So you can look at how non-Africans took Garveyism to serve their needs, and that will show you even more why we as African people need to look back towards the teachings and the message and the philosophy of Garvey, and not to take it out of context, because nothing Garvey taught was new. And some Garveyites get upset when I say this, but as a Pan Africanist, it's important for people to know nothing Garvey taught was new. Garvey's greatness was that he was able to take it and give it a program that worked. Garvey's greatness is he was able to take these principles of Pan Africanism and put wheels on it and influence millions of people to get behind a message and a movement that our ancestors have been talking about for more than 100 years before Garvey was born.
And in line with that, what has been, and I just wanted to think about, what has been the impact of the message as you've moved to brothers and sisters across the country and outside, in terms of the work, in terms of what we're doing now here in Delaware?
And I'm going to have to eventually write a political autobiography, I'm probably going to do like my ancestor Frederick Douglass. He wrote 3. Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, My Bondage and My Freedom, Life and Times. I'm probably going to do 3. The first one is going to be a political autobiography, and the reason I have to write it, Queen Mother, just like the Honorable Marcus Garvey, learning from him, he did not author a autobiography. So we only know Garvey through the mouths of other people. Amy Jakes Garvey was the widow. She wrote Garvey and Garveyism, the best read, but we still only know him through another person. I don't want that mistake, because there's nobody on this planet, brothers and sisters included, who knows my story enough to tell it accurately. Nobody. If I left this planet today, there's nobody I can tell you who could give my story accurately. I could probably piece together a couple of people who could probably collage it all together and maybe get about 50% of it right. But I don't want my story told by people who knew me. I want my story told by me, because I'm too private of an individual for someone to write a biography on Dr. Umar and think they know what they're talking about. And so learning from Garvey, I have to write a biography, with the main purpose being not to give myself flowers, but to give our children a story of inspiration, because I think in my own personal story from the ghettos of North Philly, growing up in poverty, the single mom, the divorced home, you know, I think that a lot of other young black men and women can read that and get a sense of inspiration from it the same way I read Garvey and Douglass and Martin and Malcolm and Medgar and get inspired as well.
In terms of the response, even to the concept of building the school, what has been the response to that?
There are people out there who I think were once against me, who have come to be for me because they can see that I'm one of the only ones building something. A school ain't everything, but it is a very important something. And the fact that I'm doing this and I'm not looking to the government, I'm not looking to handouts from non-Africans, there's a lot of people who can now respect it even though they once opposed it. But even in looking at Garvey's as an example, although many people came to Garvey once they saw the success, there were still many detractors who were emboldened more than ever to try to bring him down because of the animosity and the envy and the jealousy of wanting to have been Marcus Garvey. And so there are brothers and sisters out there who I think will be emboldened even more and even more dedicated to try to stop this movement, even though it is for our children after I succeed. So there will always be the enemies, and I don't pay them any mind, because none of us knows the ends of our work. You know, Queen Mother Harriet Tubman had a dangerous job, but she lived to be almost 100 years old. Malcolm and Martin only lived to be 39. Frederick Douglass, a dangerous life, and he made it, you know, up to, I think he was in his late 70s, early 80s. So you just don't know who's going to live long. You don't know who's going to die young. All you can do is do your work and leave the rest to God. And that's me. I'm leaving it all out on the table. I'm in my 40s. I got to get the work done. I got to leave the legacy. I know Father Time is ticking, and so I'm trying to give my all for my people before I get put in that box and laid to rest.
Well, definitely I could say, and as I said, my eyes to the work that I saw, that you were out there, you were actually working very hard, painting these beautiful walls. You basically had the paint, you're doing the work, you're not just talking the talk. And that to me is an example, to just let people see, children see, that wow, if you want something, you've got to be committed to it. And this definitely, even the process of FD&G coming together, children need to see that.
They do.
That they have to work. A lot of our children think, oh, I'm just going to miraculously do it, or don't understand that you've got to put the energy into doing it. What did this look like? I'm sure you have pictures of what this looked like before and after, and the work and mobilize. So I think this whole process is really a learning opportunity for our community to see the process of what you can do when you put interest, energy, determination together, and certainly infused with the spirit of the ancestors, which is a great, honorable Marcus Garvey.
When they show up on September the 11th for the block party, I want them to look and say, we're not done yet, but we're getting there.
Absolutely.
But most importantly, we bought this.
Absolutely.
We're fixing this. This is ours. This is owned by black people. Nobody helped us. Nobody gave us this. This wasn't a grant. It wasn't a loan. It wasn't a handout. It was our pennies and quarters that bought this school.
Yeah. For those who would like to connect and find out more about the mission, could you please provide us with your website and phone number?
fdmgfestival.com. That's fdmgfestival.com. Also, drumarjohnson.com. Phone number 215-989-9858 or 844-4-Dr. Umar. You can also email fdmgfestival@gmail.com and Dr. Umar Johnson at yahoo.com. Please support us. Please continue to donate. Keep the pressure coming. We will be successful.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed this broadcast, and we continue to encourage you to tune in, to tell a friend, and please visit our website at www.ccptv.org. But until next time, Louise Dente saying thank you.